Good evening, folks. This is the Factivist report for Sunday, the 11th of December. And without further ado, we're going to turn this over to Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave. So we're going to do a little bit of a recap, and then we're going to talk about who we are going to court in terms of new voters, who we're going to try to add to the voting rolls, and the importance of not only immigrants, but minority voters and female voters, LGBT voters, but also Gen Z. Gen Z is an important part of this whole thing, but we also at the same time have to be able to listen to one another and eventually unite and get some things done. So let's start this whole thing. Very first thing I want to talk about is, yes, we did get the Senate majority. Even with Sinema becoming independent, we still have the majority. This article was actually before Sinema did that. We'll talk a little bit about Kristen Sinema. Honestly, her moving was more a strategic move for her. It's not an ideological move. She's still voting the same way, blah, blah, blah. So this is a list of some of the things Raphael Warnock's winning actually helps do, even with Kristen Sinema. So this was by Ali Zasloff, and Ted Barrett, December 7th, a few days ago. This is kind of a list. I like this list. Democrats holding majorities in each committee, allowing them to process legislation and nominations much faster. Now, if that legislation has to go to the House, it doesn't really matter because the Democrats don't have a majority there. So Democrats will have stronger power to issue subpoenas. That's something. Centrist Democrats may not hold as much power over Democrats' agenda. I don't really agree with that. It's pretty much the same as it has been. Filing a Supreme Court vacancy could be a little easier. Let's see if we can get one before the next election. And Harris might not be needed as often on the Hill. We'll see.
Just a word about centrist Democrats may not hold as much power. He does help in that regard.
He does help a little bit, yeah.
But the bottom line here is that Sinema knew that she had made an awful lot of her constituents unhappy. And she also knew that she pissed off the Arizona Democrats and she would be primary. And she is a political opportunist, a corporate Democrat, who was also taken, by the way, corporate money from Republican donors. And what she is doing by becoming an independent is avoided a primary. Yeah. And what I predict, I'm going out on a limb here, this may not happen, but I still think it will, is just before the 2024 election, she will declare herself a GOP member and run as a Republican. That's what I think is going to happen.
And or she will split the vote and harm the Democrats' chance of harm Ruben Gallego, because they had no friends lost there. Yeah. So I'll get into it a little bit with her.
Bernie Sanders was much more succinct today. He called her basically a corporate Democrat.
Right.
I forget what else he said, but it wasn't very complimentary.
Well, Chuck Schumer basically said she hasn't changed. She's the same person. She has the same, she has the same goals, blah, blah, blah. So now this is a little bit about there was a CNN article for this too, but I thought Reuters might be a little better. Republicans win the House majority, setting the stage for a divided government. Basically, what is in store with the House? Investigations on Trump, on Hunter Biden's laptop, on the Afghanistan withdrawal, positioning themselves for the presidency, and trying to tamp down on aid to the Ukraine. That's what they're looking at. So that's what we're looking at with the House.
Taxpayers' dollars, not actually legislating or getting any work done, just basically stalling until 2024. You know, that's really what they do. They really don't do a whole hell of a lot in terms of doing anything for the American people. They spend their time on Twitter, and you know, I don't even know what to tell you. I'm looking here at Madison Cawthorn. You know, he's a guy who was supposedly a representative until January. He's already vacated his office. You know. Right. Gone back, he's moved down to Florida, ostensibly to run there. He's collecting his salary. It's an empty office, not paying attention to his constituents. And, you know, the GOP leader, Kevin McCarthy, still says not a word. They just don't actually do anything. It's a fact. I don't know what to tell you.
One of the things that we have to do as a collective, anyone who's politically active, anyone who's interested in this, they have to not only organize people who are already in our group and activate them, but we have to convince the unconvinced, convince those people that, you know, that think that the Democrats and Republicans are the same. This is all a big game. What's the point of voting? All of that stuff. Convince them that there is a difference and there is a reason to not give the Republicans any headway.
Right.
This is part of it, but there is that base of people. A lot of them are those disenfranchised voters. African Americans, women, LGBTQ, some of the young voters, all of those guys. So after I talk about cinema for a minute and kind of where we're looking at, I know it's an early thing, but we're going to talk about it for a second. We're going to talk about the disenfranchised voters, but I do want to say this. Warnock should have never had to go through a runoff.
Right.
He won the election.
Of the Jim Crow law.
Here's a good article from the Washington Post by Stephen Lawson. This is again about a week ago, talking about the Jim Crow laws trying to keep African Americans from running in Georgia. That's where this comes from, where you have to have a pure majority to win a seat.
50% or better.
50% plus one vote.
Right.
Okay. So to think that Raphael Warnock could have lost to Herschel Walker,
it's frightening to people, because I want you to picture Herschel Walker in the U.S. fucking Senate. If we're not enough of a laughing stock with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, we certainly would be like our own fucking version of Saturday Night Live every fucking day. He's a clown. One other thing I think we should not forget in terms of what the Republicans have on their agenda before you move forward, because I don't want to forget this, will be the attempted crucifixion of Anthony Fauci.
Oh, right.
Do not don't underestimate that, because we have Elon Musk out there calling for prosecution of Fauci today. And that's patently absurd. He has absolutely done nothing to be prosecuted for. He is a public servant who has served under Republican and Democratic presidents with distinction. And before Donald Trump was elected, public health wasn't a political hotspot. Donald Trump made it a political hotspot by playing games with the pandemic. If anyone should be prosecuted, Donald Trump should be prosecuted for dereliction of duty for putting all of these people in this country in harm's way with his bullshit.
Right. Now, one more thing. Not only the indictment of Fauci, but the indictment of science in general,
right, with
climate change and all of that as well. So the NIH, the WHO, all of that, as it will be on trial.
Right. Make no mistake about it. If the Republicans take the House and then the Senate, they will dissolve the CDC. They will dissolve the Centers for Disease Control. We will have virtually public health return to the states. And you will see a resurgence of polio, measles, you name it. I'm telling you, this cannot be, this is not overreaching and this is not overreaction. If anybody's watched the way they've handled the pandemic, and this is not going to be the final pandemic in this world, we're in a world of trouble here.
So I've seen Steve Bannon. He has actually done a lot of good work in regards to talking about why Kristen Sinema did what she did. His theory is that she feels that it is in her best interest in terms of the election to run as an independent, and that's her best chance if she decides to even run. The one thing I do give her credit for is that she waited to become an independent until after Raphael Warnock won. I give her a little bit of credit there.
I give her nothing. I give her nothing. I think,
at least she did that.
Look, she did it after the election as a way to stick a fucking screw in the Democrats' back. I'm sorry. She's get the fuck. She is trash. I just no. I give her nothing. She's a freaking goon. She's a freaking thug.
Anyway, I don't think she's
supported by Mitch McConnell. I'm going to tell you right now, the progression will be she becomes a member of the GOP.
I don't think she's going to become a full-fledged Republican. I could be wrong. This is one thing I slightly disagree with Deb on. But what Bannon is saying is that she's positioning herself the best chance that she has. She's pissed off both Republicans and Democrats. So if she runs as a Republican, I don't know. She'd be primaried as a Republican and probably lose. So we'll see.
Enough independent voters in Arizona to get her ass elected.
I don't think so either. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if she becomes a lobbyist. Honestly, she's been useless to us anyway.
Best thing on the planet would be for her to just go the fuck away. Just go away. Go. She should go with Madison Cawthorn right now. Just go. Go hang around.
Go to Florida.
Yeah, go ahead.
When she voted against the voting rights, that's when the ties were cut.
Yeah,
that's when they were cut.
That was when the Arizona Democrats said, you know what, that's not going to work. That's not acceptable.
So I know it's way too early, but I just want to throw these names out because I want people to understand that people think about the elections years ahead of time. Here's who we're talking about running against Sinema if Sinema runs as an independent, if she runs at all. But here's the Republican that's talking about running.
This man must not be allowed to win. This man,
Mark Lamb,
he is a constitutional sheriff. The only problem is they don't have any loyalty to the U.S. Constitution. They're a right-wing operative group led by Richard Mack, who was once on the board of the Oath Keepers.
Yep.
Keep this in mind. These people are all Oath Keepers.
Yep.
He must not be allowed to win. I'd
By
rather
the
have
way-
a fucking chihuahua.
I believe his son was accused of assault.
Yeah.
Maybe even not convicted, but indicted.
This guy's disgusting. He's from Pinal County, Arizona. He's from the Nutcake State.
Right.
The
Oop.
Sedona waves have gotten a hold of all these people.
Wait a minute. I lost a source. The guy who's talking about running, and Deb probably knows more about him. Let me see if I can find a quick. Ruben Gallego. Okay. He's already a representative in the House. He's talking about running. He already has been vehemently criticizing Kristen Sinema, and he's already representing the 7th congressional district in the U.S. House in Arizona.
Which means we need to line somebody up to go for that.
That house.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's who's talking about running in the Democratic Party. He was going to primary her anyway,
Right.
which is why she probably decided to.
He is popular, I will say. He
Yep.
just won re-election, I believe.
He did. So let's see here. So now we have to start thinking about what we need to do to move farther to the left and get some more of these U.S. senators out. You know, the right-wing senators and the Republican senators and the House reps and all of that. The House reps are not going to be up during the presidential term, but we have to start thinking about that, about moving it forward in 4 years. And
By the way, they have identified 3 GOP senators as possible flip seats. And I can tell you that one of them is Ted Cruz. The other is Rick Scott.
Rick Scott,
And
who's he?
there's a third one. Give me a minute.
Kansas?
No, it was a big name. It was,
Oh, Blackburn?
wasn't Marsha Blackburn. Wasn't. Go ahead. What? And I'll break in when
Okay.
I think I sent it to my regular email, so I'll go look there while you talk.
So
I got more shit everywhere. It's ridiculous.
this is just a couple of things about the Gen Z movement, all right? And I thought that this is very telling. This is from November 30th of this year, Mariah Mollinger. These teens want the right to vote. We're talking about.
Hold on, Josh
Yeah.
Hawley. Hawley was number 3.
Okay, I can see that.
So there you go.
I can see that. If we can get one of those out, I would love to get Rick Scott out.
Yeah, he looks like Lord Voldemort. He gives me the willies.
I mean, at least give Ted Cruz a run for his money.
I say go for all 3 of them. If we can get them all out, let's get them all out.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But we need to try to move these. These guys are all fascists, okay?
Right.
These are all guys who voted to overturn the election. They need to go anyway. So
And by the way, try to get Marsha Blackburn out too, of course.
Yeah.
I believe there's 11 senators, and there might be one more because the Indiana senator is running for governor now.
right.
So try to get every one of them and see what you can do. But at the
Let's
same
not
time,
leave any of them unchallenged, okay?
of course,
Let's not do that again.
don't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, Marsha Blackburn's going to win anyway.
Yeah. Well,
I understand you.
especially if you don't vote.
Right. You have the cinema seat. You have John Tester. You have the guy in Sherrod Brown, and you have the Joe Manchin seat. So you have 4 that are really potentially vulnerable there. So so we have, in terms of the youth movement, this is what you need. You need teenagers who want to be invested in their future.
Right.
These teens won the right to vote. Their county disenfranchised them. High school activists in California fought hard to lower the voter age, only to be ignored. Now, this was a county that they won the right to vote at age 16 in local elections, and the it was never enacted in their county. So this is, again, Mariah Ballinget, November 30th, 2022. So this is in Oakland.
The GOP doesn't want them active.
Right. As a matter of fact, they're looking to move the
voting age up.
If all had gone,
because God knows, you know, they can't. Like I said, they can't win without doing something fucked up. They can't. They can't win a legitimate election. They have to either gerrymander, oppress. There's no way they can win a legitimate election unless they're, you know, below the Mason-Dixon line. You know, that's the only way. I vote for secession, but I know that won't go over big. I'm sorry. That's the only hope I have for anything below the Mason-Dixon line, is that they will decide to secede.
So I'm gonna read a few paragraphs of this. I think people need to hear this. If all had gone as planned, this is in Oakland. If all had gone as planned, thousands of high schoolers in Oakland would have cast their ballots for the first time on election day. Many of them had worked since their freshman year to lower the voting age to 16 for school board races. And school boards, we've been talking about school boards for forever, arguing that no one else had a higher stake in who led their district. And they're absolutely right. Where else would you want these kids to start their voting other than in their own school boards? They won, persuading a supermajority of the electorate in 2020 to expand voting rights to younger teens. But Alameda County, which runs the city's elections, never implemented the measure. It also failed to deliver on a 2016 ballot initiative from Berkeley that did the same thing. So Tuesday passed like election days passed, with 16 and 17-year-olds watching from the sidelines. Now, this is very important. This is Rochelle Burdon, 17, who worked on the campaign. It was a step closer to a right to vote. They said their peers were given false hope that the high schoolers would finally have a vote. It's always the adults making the decisions on behalf of us. We deserve to have a say in things that impact us too. So, but they're going to continue to press this. Okay, they're undeterred. That's another thing about the Gen Z and the youth movement. Okay. Teens who had worked hard to win the franchise, the franchise, were denied the right to vote, a failure that also thwarted the will of 67% of voters in Oakland and 70% in Berkeley. The 2022 election did see widespread disenfranchisement in the Deep Blue Bay area. So
that's unfortunate.
In a perfect world, this would be easy to implement, but we want to make sure we do it right. Yeah. Graneo said, I completely understand how frustrated people are. We all hope this would be done sooner. We've done a lot of work on this already, and it's going well. We're very close. Well, you know, it's too late for some. This is a nationwide fight to lower the voting age. Now, we're talking about local elections in a lot of this. They're also talking about lowering the age to 16 for federal elections.
Do it.
16, and this is Ming, okay? So Grace Ming, who is the Democrat in New York, I believe she took Eulene's seat in the assembly, I believe. Well, actually, this is somebody different. 16 and 17-year-olds are legally permitted to work and drive, Ming said in a news release. They also pay federal income taxes. That is right and fair. It is right and fair to also allow them to vote.
There's another thing that they are able to do, and that is to go into the service.
Right.
If they can be recruited in high school, you can be recruited in the United States by the military as juniors and seniors, because I signed paperwork to keep them away from my kids.
Right.
So if they could be, brainwashed into joining the U.S. military, then they should have the right to vote.
So this is a very good quote, too, by Andrew Wilkes, the Chief Policy and Advocacy Officer of a group called Generation Citizen. At 16, that's the ideal age to develop the habit for democratic participation.
Yep.
So non-participation is a problem across all ages. This is something that we're working on. And then they talk about Generation Z offering the hope that this could change. Now, when you're younger, maybe you're a little more idealistic. Maybe you go for all or nothing. You will learn all the time, different strategies and things of that nature. You're also going to learn how to work with different people. You're very idealistic. You want everything at the same time. So one thing we have to work with this group and help them learn how to cooperate and negotiate also. You can't just dismiss them saying, oh, they're just a bunch of idealistic kids. That might be one of the things that Hillary Clinton did back in 2016 that hurt her campaign just a little bit. But what I will say is this scares the hell. The Gen Z movement scares the hell out of the right wing. It just does. Some Republicans, this is a Daily Beast article by Kathy Wheel. Some Republicans want to raise the voting age after Gen Z midterm turnout. Now, this is, they show Maxwell Frost and all of that. So let's see here. Oh, they're not going to let me show it. There was a guy. There was a guy from Fox News. He basically said, let me see if I can. No, I can't refresh it. Let me see.
I have it. I'll put it in. I suspect.
Yeah. So
it'll be all right.
I can't remember the guy's name, but he basically said we have to keep these guys from voting for now because they're brainwashed.
Give me a break, will you? People who watch Fox News are brainwashed.
So we have that.
And the people who deliver the information from Fox News are brain damaged.
So now we have court rulings, Jim Crow 2.0. I'm not going to go too much into it, but just know that there are still moves to suppress minority vote, and there were rulings in Arizona that were upheld. A lower court said that they weren't, that they overturned them, and then the Supreme Court upheld those voting laws that the lower court found were unfair to minorities.
Remember when we did the midterm wrap, there were 4 states where courts found their redistricting to be racist redistricting. And
Right.
the GOP went ahead and left them that way anyway. And
Yep.
went full head, somehow there's got to be teeth in the law so that when that happens, what's the point in having a court? If the court comes down with a ruling, you can just ignore it and go ahead with it. Seriously,
Yep.
Come on, let's get real here. The reason we go through, they tell us to work through the system. You work through the system, you get a ruling, and then you can just ignore it and do what you want. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. And also understand, the Florida gerrymandering. Maybe it wouldn't have made that much of a difference because the Florida Democrats made a huge blunder in not infusing money into that campaign or into that state. But you saw gerrymandering to try to neuter North Florida, which was heavily African American.
Basically, DeSantis on his own, without even the help of his legislature, redistricted the entire state. That's what we call, dictatorship.
Yep. Impact of voter suppression on communities of color. I don't know if it was this article, there were other articles out there saying that African Americans and minorities typically try to vote on the weekends because they work during the weekdays. And if you remember, Georgia successfully opened up the polling on Saturdays for that runoff.
Yep.
So there were a couple of statistics in here. So estimates of people denied voting rights. Now, we're talking about those who were denied due to a felony conviction. And there have been some right-wing pundits talking about widespread voter fraud, blah, blah, blah. Some of it has to do with someone who had a felony conviction said that they were told that they were allowed to vote, and then they voted, and then they found out they weren't allowed to vote. And that vote was overturned. So laws in 48 states ban people with felony convictions from voting. So
yeah,
there are
people with felony convictions can't vote, but insurrectionists can serve in government. How does that fucking work?
Right. So
ridiculous.
Here's some statistics here. An estimated 4.6 million people are disenfranchised due to felony conviction, a figure that's declined by 24% since 2016, as more states enacted policies to curtail this practice and state prison populations declined modestly. So 1 out of 50 adult citizens, 2% of the total U.S. voting eligible population, is disenfranchised due to a current or previous felony convictions. 3 out of 4 of these people are living in their communities having fully completed their sentences or remaining supervised while on probation or parole. In 3 states, more than 8% of the adult population, 1 out of every 13 adults, is disenfranchised due to this: Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee. Now, Florida remains the nation's disenfranchisement leader in absolute numbers, with over 1.1 million people currently banned from voting, often because they cannot afford to pay court-ordered monetary sanctions. An estimated 934,500 Floridians who have completed their sentences remain disenfranchised despite a 2018 ballot referendum that promised to restore their voting rights. So, disenfranchisement affects a very large portion of the African American community. 1 in 19 African Americans of voting age is disenfranchised, a rate of 3.5 times that of non-African Americans. 5.3% disenfranchised compared to 1.5 of the adult non-African American population. More than 10% of American adults is disenfranchised in 8 states: Alabama, Arizona, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Virginia. So, now, let's see. Oh, come on. This is talking about expanding voting rights for legal non-citizens to participate in municipal elections. And this is becoming a growing issue, especially in New York City. And then you go from that to non-English speakers. Now, this is an untapped resource in some respects because you have, if you remember, well, this is, okay, so we have, this is a grassroots effort to reach Asian American voters. Now, you notice those candidates with more resources, if they are able to get more translators out there, that does help them and does boost their chances, especially if they're in a high concentrated area of one type of foreign language speaker, like a heavily Chinese area. And this is potentially a way to reach more people who are being adversely affected. Because if you know anything about the GOP,
go ahead.
This is an old bill, I know, 2020, but this is a thing that they've been hammering for a long time.
Don't think this won't come back. This will.
This is America. We speak English here. You don't belong here.
You're in America now. Speak English.
Right.
But, actually, nobody actually says that to them when they travel, do they? No. Because nobody's quite as ignorant as we are here.
What doesn't, I didn't put anything in here about this, but what really kind of blows my mind is the right-wing Latino voter. As John Leguizamo said, a Latino voter voting for Trump is kind of like a roach voting for Raid, or a chicken voting for McDonald's chicken McNuggets. It's like, what's the goal here? So,
well, at least in Florida, when I was putting together one video, when I did the wrap on the 2022 midterms after Warnock won, the thing is, in Florida, they just assumed that the minority populations would vote Democrat.
That was a mistake. That was a mistake.
They really did. I have to say, they blew it in every other state, but in Florida, they basically took things for granted. They, defunded the state. They basically threw away two really good candidates, the Democrats did, in Val Demings. Now she's lost to the House and the Senate. It is an out there floating around with no job. And she's really one of the best across the aisle workers that the Democrats had. And Charlie Crist, okay, he was a good candidate. And, he could have beaten DeSantis, and it's more than just the redistricting. It was the fact that, DeSantis spent $17 million just in Miami alone, which is what Chris spent on the entire state through the whole primary. So, you can't have it both ways. All right. And Florida, that was not the right state to do that to. It was absolutely not. That state has gone from being a very important swing state to a blood red fucking right-wing cesspool. And it is a cesspool. DeSantis has turned that state into a fascist hellhole. So the Democrats have a lot of work to do there. Now they're calling for the head of the Democratic Party in that state to step down. And maybe he should. But the bigger Democratic Party needs to get its shit together where Florida is concerned. And they need to do it before 2024, because one of those seats that we can flip is Rick Scott.
Rick Scott.
And he's in fucking Florida. Okay. Take it seriously. Run Val Demings. Whatever it takes. Run Val Demings again. Okay. I don't care. She's a good candidate, but give her something to work with.
One thing I will say is that.
And now, wait, the Democrats are going to have to now go out and win hearts and minds back again. They need to go out and court the Latino vote and the black vote in Florida. They need to move their ass and get it done. Right.
And honestly, it doesn't matter if you're Latino or if you're. Listen, people are hip to that game. If you're sincere, they're gonna figure that out. One thing I will say in terms of New York also took it for granted that, hey, this is a blue state. They lost some opportunities against what's her name, the media darling, Stefanik. Elise Stefanik had 3 Asian translators out there, I believe, or it was the other one. They had more resources out there than the other candidates. So
she's a psycho. Okay.
Yeah,
she is.
I know. So when you have the advertising resources, when you have the resources to reach out to people that you normally couldn't reach out to people, especially with language barriers, you're going to have an advantage. And there were possibilities lost there.
Right.
So he was an interesting, that candidate running against Stefanik was interesting. I'm not saying that he was as progressive as I would have liked, but I understood where they were going with that. Can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but he was more of a moderate. Yeah, he was more of a centrist. He was, in the intelligence agencies and blah, blah, blah. So, but he would have voted the way you would have wanted him to vote in terms of democratic policies. You lost it. You lost that shot. So I think I don't know in terms of Stefanik. She's still kind of high up in the hierarchy, right?
Matt Castelli was who ran against
Matt Castelli. Thank you. As I said, he wasn't a Republican or he wasn't a Democratic darling, progressive guy. That's the other thing. people need to stop saying, "Oh, we'll just run a progressive in Texas." Run a progressive in Texas if they'll win.
Right.
If you have to run a moderate in Texas, do it.
Right.
Right.
The goal now is we need to get the fascists out of office. Okay. We need to get them out of office. As long as the candidates uphold LGBT civil rights and a woman's rights to choose, you know what? If it's a centrist Democrat, it's a centrist Democrat in a state that's more conservative. It is the way it is right now until we can move everything to the left a little bit. That's a process. And, moving people to the left is merely making sure that everybody has civil rights. That's really what it is. And that, we maintain, safety nets, whatever, that it's not socialism. That's not socialism. That is what the government is supposed to do, is take care of its people. It's not just the people taking care of the government or paying.
Remember a few
national anthem.
Yeah. Remember a few days ago when you guys were all up in arms about the rail strike? Remember that? 2 or 3 days ago. Now it's Brittany Griner, but 2 or 3 days ago you were upset about the rail strike. The only way to take care of those rail workers and take care of the unions is to get more Democrats in. Okay.
The GOP is not they're anti-union. They are not pro-union. They're the people who passed the right to work laws, which is flat out union busting. Okay. The unions are keeping people from working. What they're doing is keeping people from working in unsafe conditions, but, and from child labor and all of that nonsense. But, that whole right to work stuff, again, the GOP and the right wing is very good at framing everything as your right. It's your right to get fucked over by corporations. That's basically what the right to work law is. It's your right to get fucked over for menial pay by corporations. It's your right to not take medicine and die from COVID. They have all of this stuff wrapped up as though they are the purveyors of people's rights while they oppress everybody who doesn't look, think, or act like them. They're full of shit, is what I'm saying.
So before we go, I'm just gonna talk very briefly about the whole right to work thing, since it was brought up. I would say, I don't know where that happened. So on average, I'm just estimating it. I pay $600 a year. I pay about $50, or actually a little more, but all right, $50 a year, give or take. So let's say $650 a year in union dues. All right. If there is a major grievance that has to go nationally, that costs thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars just in paper and ink and labor hours and getting an arbitrator for the union, paying them. That is a lot of money. We have to defend non-union members that aren't paying anything. Where else do you have something where you can get things for free, get free representation? Nowhere that I know of. We lost a case where we have to spend our own resources for people who don't pay for it. That harms union representation. That puts us behind the 8 ball in some respects. I am completely against right to work laws. It's like, listen, you pay for a service, you get the service. Where else? You can't go to McDonald's, ask for a hamburger, and not pay for it.
Right.
You're asking basically for, and it's not legal, but it's representation. You should have to pay for that representation.
That's right.
The union pays us, the union reps, and everybody else. That's a cost on them. So they have to get their money from somewhere, and it's from the members. And that's every union. So I don't know how people don't understand that. And then they talk about how unions aren't powerful enough. Well, if you get rid of the right to work, any state that has a right to work law, you notice, hey, it was much harder. My working conditions were much harder in Virginia.
Right.
Well, that's because right to work laws. Now, by the way, now we're talking about, Brittany Griner, okay, in terms of protection of U.S. citizens. By the way, no one is more or less because of their gender, sexual orientation, race, or how they feel about the country, or how they feel about the the national anthem, rather. Sorry. Representation is representation. You are an American citizen. We're going to try to get you out. Where do the Republicans stand on that? You're a chess piece.
Right.
Stand
on that. Now they want to impeach Joe Biden for that. Good luck. They got a laundry list. Let's see how that goes for them. They have absolutely no impeachable offenses whatsoever against Joe Biden. None. Marjorie Taylor Greene,
who, by the way, I know Milo Yiannopoulos is supposedly interning for her or whatever.
Whatever.
Kyle Rittenhouse is supposedly going to intern for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay. Or Matt Gaetz, or both of them, whatever. But Marjorie Taylor Greene sings his praises. So she's against killers. She's against the merchant of death, Victor Bout. Okay. The guy's an arms dealer. He's not a good guy. We get that. Nobody you're going to do a prisoner exchange for is a good guy.
Right.
In another country. Right. Very doubtful. So I'm just saying.
She's got her own little prisoner exchange going.
Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah. But you're going to turn around and try to impeach Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Good luck with that.
Enjoy that.
Good luck with that, Margie.
It was revealed today that the Republicans who did not go along with the J6 committee, or did not support the J6 committee, could be subject to, I forget what it is, reporting for ethics violations. So right now the J6 committee is weighing criminal referrals, which, frankly, I think the DOJ has those nailed down. So this will be symbolic on behalf of the J6 committee, but I think it's important that they go there and complete this process anyway.
Right. One thing before we shut down, I wanted to explain to people why I did this particular show. Deb and I have been talking about it for a while. We do agree that more people need to vote, but we need to continue the discussion and try to get more people to realize what's at stake here. I know Deb is in contact with someone else who has their own ideas in regards to that. I don't want to talk too much about it. I don't know if we'll be able to have them on the show in the next week or so, but we need to think about this, and not just right after an election or right before an election. We need to get people involved.
We need to start now.
And we need to start now, right this second.
Right now.
And basically all the time, but yeah.
Sarah left me a message in chat, and she's absolutely right. Disabled voters also have problems.
Right.
Because their signatures sometimes aren't the same when they write them, and they are ballots are being rejected because of that. So that needs to be fixed. We need to have someone there. Maybe someone has to be there for those people.
I didn't find an article on it, but she's absolutely right. Also, wheelchair accessibility isn't always there for people, so that's also an issue as well. I don't know in terms of visually impaired or what kind of things are for those people. I know some people.
I know they can have people do the ballots for them. I know there are people who do that. People who assist people. But the point is that, we live in a country of 337 million people, and they're not all healthy, and they're not all the same. And they all have one thing in common, and that they have the right to vote.
Right.
So we need to make accommodations where they are needed, no matter what. It doesn't really matter. And we don't need a Supreme Court that limits people's voting rights. We need a Supreme Court that expands rights. A Supreme Court should never be used to take away anybody's rights, no matter whether it's voting or marriage or anything else. Once you have a court system that starts doing shit like that, you're on the road to fascism. I tell you this in all seriousness. They should never have the right to take away someone's rights. That is not okay. All right.
And by the way, if someone says they're going to vote for Trump or whoever, I'm still going to fight for your rights. I'm going to try to convince you that you're wrong over and over and over again, but I will continue to fight for your rights. Okay, because at some point, you may figure out, hey, wait a minute, he's been fighting for my rights all along. These guys just told me I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do the other thing. Eventually, you're going to see the light. Eventually. I've seen, I don't understand the LGBTQ's game, those who are on the right wing, African Americans who are on the right wing, Latinos who are on the right wing. I don't get it. I mean, Deb's been talking about females who are on the right wing all the time. We are we're our husbands' wives and all of that. That's a religious, woo-woo craziness, but we
have a lesser vessel according to Lauren Boebert, but she can speak for herself. She's not speaking for me.
She's, what? Enough.
She is the lesser vessel in many respects.
She's not even the rep yet. By the way, they're still doing that. They're still doing their recount. Now she's going to win. She's probably going to win. 98% chance she's going to win. But shut up, Lauren. You're not even a rep yet. Calm down.
All right, gang. This is where we are. We will have this up tomorrow, and we will be back next week. And we're just not going to shut the fuck up. We have a lot to talk about. We'll talk to y'all later.
Bye-bye.